but God stayed. And he wasn't the light energy at this time. He was everything, but he also manifested as a figure of a man. But he was a giant man because I could look over and I couldn't see his face because he was much bigger than Jesus was from my near-death experience. And I could see him from the waist down. I could see his calves and his legs and his sandals. And I asked him, what's it all about?
Perfect, perfect, beautiful. Thank you so much, Janet.
Thank you, thank you. I
Okay,
love
so
sharing stories.
I can imagine. I mean, for a lot of NDEers, they say that when they share their stories, almost like they're reliving it. And
Yeah,
so, that's of course a problem if they had a negative NDE. That's
yeah,
painful. But if it's a positive one and you're in heaven, you're near highly evolved spirits, it's just like heaven every day, you know?
yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I have some questions. I usually have way too many, and like I still have a good amount, but it's like reasonable. So I think we can do this.
Okay,
And if I ask any question and you're just like don't feel comfortable answering it, just say pass, and then
okay.
yeah. All
I'll do
right,
my best.
so so okay. So the first question I have, why do you think so many NDEers are told by heaven? Because this is one of those things that is repeated. It does happen quite a few times. Told by heaven to write a book and to share their story. Like what is it? Why?
Because they want everybody to know. They need to have the information out there, um, because it's been pushed down so often. These things have been going on for a long time, but when people talked about them, they were told them it was they had a mental disease or something, and sometimes they even would get incarcerated. But in reality, it did happen, and only by getting this information out there will people realize that heaven is real and that we need to become more aware of it and start living our life with love, because there's just too much negativity in this world these days. So
Yeah.
that's my view of it.
Yeah, I
I
I
know
mean
they say, a
I
lot of people say that it's the apocalypse coming, more people are starting to have spiritual experiences, but you find out through talking to other near-death experiences, they've been having them. Even, generations back, people are
Mhm.
sharing their stories that are still alive that had them, and they couldn't tell them because they weren't accepted.
Yes, I'm so glad you mentioned that because I was reading something recently that was saying that there are a lot more NDEs only because it's you have a lot of channels now, a lot of channels that are doing just this thing. But when you read like you go to nedurf.org or other research websites or books, you realize these have been happening since the beginning of time.
Yes,
It's just
absolutely.
yeah. But so the reason why I asked that first question is because I understand that and I totally get that. It makes sense, but it's like it also kind of makes you go back and think, okay, why are we here? If we're believing the idea of, and I agree that we have we're these souls that have this meeting with our council, well, these ascended masters, and they're telling us, what type of lives to live so that we can experience, because it really comes down to experience. Because we can learn a lot, quote unquote, on books, go to the Akashic records and read about all these different ideas, but it's like hands-on experience. It's like kind of like when you're a nurse or a doctor, you don't just read books and all of a sudden become a doctor or a nurse. You have to have hands-on experience, right? So it kind of makes sense that the soul would have to have these experiences on in a physical way, in a physical body, on a physical planet. So we are generally coming from heaven, hopefully, to earth, and yet somehow in the midst of being on earth we've forgotten these principles, the principle of love, these principles that people experience during their NDEs. So you're saying that maybe something has gone like too amiss on earth, like there's some kind of because I'm just trying to understand why would we have to be reminded this. and you're giving them amnesia so they can't remember. You don't want them to remember their previous lives or anything else prior to this. But as soon as they get into the ring, and, and they're doing the fight, then you're sending people to say, okay, remember that, you're love and you're this and you're that. And it just kind of seems, I don't know, it just seems a little, not to say weird to me, but it just seems like something's missing. I don't know.
I think it is kind of fruitless, but
Yeah.
God learns through each of us, every experience, because he's an ever evolving energy too, through new situations. So if you want to think about the new ways that people live these days, let's take the LBGQ, whatever they call it. I'm sorry. Um, he's learning through them too. They're not wrong. It's just that that's a new way of learning, and he's experiencing other reactions again from other viewpoints. So, because he says, what we do to the least of man, we do to him, because it's in each and every one of them. So each interaction, our interactions today and everybody else's interactions throughout their life, is still making him evolve. You don't learn out of just one experience. And as life changes here, so does he.
Yeah, and I mean that's one of the many things I really sit and think about these things, and that kind of concerns me because it's like on one hand you think that, and I can understand how both are true. There's a lot of paradoxes I've noticed in heaven. So it's like God is perfect, God is everything, God is all powerful, and at the same time we're saying that God is evolving through all of our experiences. Like it's like we're like the worker bees giving all the energy and of the stuff to the queen bee. To some extent. And then and then thank God it's not just Earth. Like thank God there are, I hope you, and I'm assuming you believe this as well, that there are plenty other,
I believe it. Yeah,
all right, numberless planets and species out there. But with just Earth alone, like if you just think about the negative, because we are, in my book, a negative planet. Like we're generally not going in the right direction. We're very militant and aggressive and kind of backwards a little bit. So if you have these planets that are kind of really just becoming really regressive, and that's feeding God, like there are times like for a while, and this is just my first time saying this, but this was a thought that came to my mind because I do believe that is a possibility. I don't know if you know the game Othello, where it's like you keep changing the pieces from white to black. Like you have two people playing, and you have the circle of pieces on the board, and you're trying to make all the pieces either all white or all black. And I started to think, I'm like, okay, so if we all are pieces of God, right? And if all the majority of the pieces turn dark or bad, does that mean that God now becomes a dark entity as opposed to a positive entity, or the opposite? If all the pieces become white, then God becomes love and goodness. So that's a thought that has come to my mind in regards to that. If we are all pieces of God, you would think that the negative or the dark forces, that their ultimate goal is to get as many as many souls on the dark side as possible, because that would in turn turn the entirety, which is God, into darkness.
No, because he's not actually the darkness.
Okay.
That would be the ego. That's the dark side, if you want to call it the devil, if you want to say. That's my view of it. So he's got a hand in this thing too. That's the energy that fights off the light. But all in all, the light can snuff that out in a snap if he wants to. But he's letting us deal with it and experience it through this life. But even if you look at the planet as a whole in life, I've seen it on the science channels, that everything has a pattern. There's moments of peace and then moments of violence, and moments of peace and moments of violence. We're in the moments of violence, according to the charts. So hopefully at some point it will calm down and we'll go back to more peaceful nature.
Yeah. And I mean, and what you're saying, like you mentioned, how easy, like they say, love conquers all, or good conquers all, or in the end. And you see that a lot, like in a lot of the NDEs I've watched, you see like these supreme beings, whether they be like Archangel Michael, or sometimes they're just nameless angels that come and help souls when they are being attacked by the dark side. They say that it's like they're not even breaking a sweat. Like it's very easy for them to just make these things disappear. So I've heard this many times, and that's why I don't really put too much fear in that. So that's one thing. And then you also have writings like the Law of One, the raw material, where they kind of say that evil, darkness, all that stuff is an illusion. It's not real. It literally is kind of like as a child, my parents, in order to make me be scared of strangers, because I was a very happy, it's very weird because I was born in the Bronx, very dangerous neighborhood, but I just was like smiling and wanted to go with everybody and talk to everybody. And it's still my problem today. But they, because of that, had to like put fear in me. I had no fear, zero. And so they would start to like dress up like strangers sometimes in the park and say, "Hey, little girl, want to come and get some candy?" And I'm like, "Sure." And they're like, "No." So I kind of think of the dark side as that. It's like, God putting these fake little challenges and tribulations and like the devil, like to me, the devil's not real. It is a creation of God to some extent to keep us, to challenge us, to give us that option of good or bad.
Well, we do learn a lot more from the negative. Overcoming the negative, we learn a lot more from that than we do just skating along with a happy-go-lucky life. So we're learning a lot right now. And as far as your gift of friendliness, that is a gift of openness. And that's something you should treasure. So yeah.
And so then you had mentioned the 13 events. I didn't understand at first. So you're saying that you had 13 NDEs, or you mean like,
no.
Oh, okay.
This third near death experience umbrellaed everything. These moments were different points of my life, and these were all spiritual moments that he wanted me to be aware of that happened. So it wasn't 13.
So we could say that the other 10 are like STEs, so spiritually transformative experiences, maybe some OBEs thrown in there, some, is that what you mean?
Yeah, something like that. Not OBEs, but let's take this for example. Okay, the Council of Spiritual Beings. This is one thing he showed me, but this happened after the third near-death experience when this would probably be an OBE, because I went to bed after I was reading my romance novel for the night, so I enjoyed that, and I fell asleep.
I used to read those too.
Yes, I love it. I'd like to get back to it too, but I'm always so drawn to this. I just can't get this out of my mind. So then I was pulled up to heaven. My spirit was pulled up to heaven, and I found myself before this panel of spiritual beings. And they wanted to know what I learned about judgment. And of course, they knew I had, because they had let me know that they had brought Bob from Austria into my life in Colorado for a purpose. Now, he lived clear on the other side of the world. Can you imagine the planning that it took to get us together for this? But because we fell in love, he took me to places that I saw that I had misjudged people. Now, let me clarify that. Nothing ever came out of my mouth, but I judged my neighbor because of the swimming suit he wore. I judged my grandfather because of the apartment that he lived in, an apartment above a store in downtown Iowa. And I couldn't understand why he didn't have a house like we did, because I was really young at the time. All this was in my elementary school days that I formed these opinions simply by something I misunderstood. My mom told me, when I was out playing on playgrounds and wanted to twirl with monkey bars that they had, she told me to go get pants on, keep my dress down and go get pants on. So I took it we must be modest, she says. So I blew that out of proportion. And then the neighbor's Speedo swimming suit I did not appreciate that. So, because it wasn't the same swimming suit as my dad wore. So I had judged that, but nothing ever came out of my mouth, but God knew that I had judged. I had judged some other things, but Bob had taken me to places where I realized that that's the swimming suit that they wear over there. And he puts it right in front of my face, because I did not like that at all. And when I met Bob, that's what he wore. So I said, "Oh my God, why did you put this to me?" He puts this kind of stuff in our faces sometimes. So yeah. The panel of beings is the one that plans our life, and that was an out-of-body experience, and so that was important, because they made it known that they brought Bob into my life for a special plan for both of us. Mine was him to love me, and I was to go over to Europe and do, I've made them known of the near-death experience over there, and I learned about judgment over there too. So it's a lot of
Wow.
coordinating going on.
So that brings up like two questions or comments, but I mean, to me, judgment is an issue for me as well. Like I mean, not recently, like last couple of years, went through some extreme situations that clearly were orchestrated by heaven to help me with that. Really extreme. But the thing with judgment, it's like anything else. Like everything is kind of like a balancing act, because the more you try to be a quote unquote good or pious or heaven, like a good person, and you kind of feel like when you hear these stories, that's kind of the point. You want to be better and be good, as opposed to the opposite. You become judgmental because you're trying to do quote unquote better actions and things, and then people who are not, you're going to very clearly see that because you don't want to be doing those actions. So to me, it's a catch-22 where it's like the more pious that you try to be, the more susceptible you are to being judgmental, But at the same time, you look at our world now, and because if we got to the point where we really just accepted everything and nothing is wrong ever, what's the world look like? It's gonna, like I think that's when we could have some problems, So it's just, to me, it's just, but it's a balance, because on the other hand, if you have ever been on the other side of that, and me being a Black female, I've clearly been on the other side of that many times in my life and in the future, so it makes you say, okay, you don't really particularly care about judgmental people or people being like that, but it's like there really has to be a balance. Otherwise, we're just not going to get better as a collective,
Yeah.
So yeah.
I was shown one vision that has happened. And it was the immigration of the people from the war-torn areas. I think it was in Iraq, Afghanistan, those kind of areas that migrated up into Europe, because Angela Merkel had said that they were welcome there. And so masses of people came through, and I happened to be over there when they were coming through, so I knew it did happen. But it wasn't that they were. What God was doing was He's mixing us together, because eventually we will become more of a one nation if we continue to do this, and we'll realize that we actually are all divinely inside, and just handling different kinds of lifetimes. So that I know. And also there was another time that I had another out-of-body experience, that I was up in outer space with some other people, and we were floating above the earth and looking down on it. And it was beautiful to see the earth. The earth was like a basketball from where we were, size of a basketball. And we were talking about something, I don't know what, but then the others left, but God stayed. And He wasn't the light energy this time. He was everything, but He also manifested as a figure of a man. But He was a giant man, because I could look over and I couldn't see His face, because He was much bigger than Jesus was from my near-death experience. And I could see Him from the waist down, could see His calves and his legs in His sandals. And I asked Him, what's it all about? And He said, His arm came up and He said, behold. And as He lifted His arm, then lines start shooting out around the earth into different colored lines going, and they'd go like the Luke Skywalker's sword, shoom, as they whipped by, and they were different dimensions. There were different dimensions, and every dimension had a purpose and reason. So we would, like you said, we would be naive to think that we were the only things that He created. And there
I'm getting goosebumps. Sorry, I'm getting goosebumps, because I wrote a sci-fi. I'm not gonna get too deep into it, and I know that I should be editing it, and I'm sure I channeled it because it connects to what you just said. That whole moment, it connects to that
Yeah,
book. So I'm going to definitely jump on that.
yeah.
Oh my God,
And
that is amazing.
yeah, and I said, when that happened, I said, "Oh, I get it." And I said, "It's about math." And he said, "Yes." And what it is Max Planck came up with the theory, what do they call that? It was right in my mind, and now I don't want to think about it.
If you can't, I'll have
Quantum
it. I'll
theory,
have
the
it.
quantum theory, quantum
Okay, you
theory.
got it. You got it. You got
Yeah,
it.
quantum theory. And he's the master of quantum. Just by a breath, or just by a thought, he can bring energy and matter to create something. That's what he's all about.
Wow.
He's the king of quantum.
The king of quantum. You saying
King of quantum.
God is the king of quantum.
Uh-huh.
I love it.
That's why
Okay.
when they try and videotape, if you ever saw, there's on YouTube, if you go to a easy explanation of quantum theory, it'll be a cartoon, but there's a guy that talks about these. Uh, uh, they shoot some things between
The double
slits,
slit.
this double
Double slit.
slit thing. But
Yeah,
then when
yeah.
they try to film it, it doesn't act the same. They said it
Mhm.
seems to have a consciousness, because it does have a consciousness, because the quantum theory is God, and he's
Wow.
consciousness of everything, the super consciousness. Yeah.
Awesome. 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 So it sounds like you believe that Jesus and God are two separate beings. Is that
Nope.
correct? Or
Nope.
no?
They're three.
Oh,
All three. Super.
okay.
They're three together and separate.
Okay.
They have that ability to be, they're the Trinity, but they're separate too.
Now, okay, so is this something that you took from like your past, or this is something that you learned during all of these experiences? Because you
It's
were you go ahead.
it's just a knowing that I have from having these
Oh,
experiences, that they
oh,
are uh, that they are one energy in different forms. I mean, just like we're all connected, we're all one energy because we're all connected by the silver thorn, but we're
yeah.
taking
And so,
different
okay,
forms.
so when you're saying the three, we spoke about God, we spoke about Jesus, and then you say, would it be the Holy Ghost or the Holy Spirit that people talk
Holy
about?
Spirit, yes, uh-huh.
Is that
Because
the
the Holy
feminine?
Spirit is God's spirit. Holy Spirit is God's spirit, and
Okay,
it's through the Holy Spirit that Jesus and God, because they're one, they can live and experience life with us.
okay. And now the Holy Spirit, is that a feminine energy or is it all male?
Oh, it's
All male.
it's no it's no it's everything. So it's not male. I mean, I'm just using as he because my parents were Lutheran and I grew up Christian, so it's just a habit. But it's an it, but it doesn't seem to be personal enough to me. So that's why I call it he. But it's non-gender. God is non-gender. It's an energy.
Okay. So I've always had trouble like comprehending the Trinity idea, but now I'm trying to work it a little bit. I'm only going to stay here for a second because if I can't get it, we'll just move on. But okay, so let's just say the three. So God, would they say God the Father, the Holy Ghost, and then Jesus. So is Jesus more like the Son, or is he just like the physical manifestation of God and
He's supposed to be the son,
the
but he's
Son?
still tethered to Jesus. I mean, to God. We're all tethered to God. We're all so in way. So we're
And the
still.
Holy Spirit never becomes physical. It's always just this
It's the
spiritual.
energy. It's the
It's the
energy. I
energy.
explain it like this. Uh, God is the creator. Jesus is the healer. The Holy Spirit is the energy that does the healing.
Okay. Okay. All right. So now when you saw Jesus, I know you mentioned in a previous podcast, so this is something that is like, I know this is going to sound very peculiar and very detailed, but I have heard, obviously at this point, a lot of accounts of people interacting and going on adventures with Jesus, as he's everywhere, clearly, right? Um, there are people who see him in the white robe. It's pretty much always a white robe. I don't hear about him in jeans and sneakers or anything. It's pretty much always a white robe. Um, And it's going to be two questions, actually. I got to make sure I ask another one. So, but they sometimes see him with a gold belt. Many people see him with a gold belt around that white robe. But I heard that you mentioned in your one of your previous ones, you saw him in a rope. He had a rope around the yeah. So I'm just curious if there's any symbolism, any reasoning for this. Like, it's just always one of the two. It's either a golden belt or a rope, and I just don't get it. Do you think that
Oh,
there's any
well, I don't know what their belief systems were, but I mean, I wasn't a church person. My parents were Lutherans and they grew up in the Lutheran faith. And every time you know, heard about Jesus, he always had a rope around, you know, was with a
yeah.
down
Historically,
and
that would
rope.
make sense. Yeah.
So that might have been why that I saw it. But in some other faiths, you know, they talk about even the purple sash. So,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
so maybe it's according to your belief system.
So you think that the image that you saw of him, because it sounds like primarily he's a light being, but you did mention at one point his hair was moving. So I'm assuming that you did see an
Well,
actual person.
he had a male form, but he
Okay.
radiated light. He was an energy too. I mean, the energy has took the shape of a person.
Yeah.
So he looked like a
And
person, but he radiated light.
and the person that you saw, was that like the image that you might have seen before, or one that you would have been like, oh yes, that's Jesus, or did it look a little different than what you might have expected?
No, he looked the same of the outline. I could not see his face because the light rays were so bright coming out of his heart center and from around him that made it hard for me to see. Plus, I was in orb shape at that time, and I was glowing. So I had all these light rays that I didn't hurt my face, or you know, my vision didn't hurt me to look through them. I just couldn't clearly distinguish his face. So
Okay, okay. Okay.
I if I could only go by his shape. And that's what I explained. He had a male figure, but then I thought, okay, why would he come from me? It must be because he had hair down here. And I thought, okay, I don't know any men but with long hair. It must be a woman with a male figure. So I was rationalizing it away, you know. But then later on, then I find out that it was indeed Jesus.
Okay. And that kind of connects to the other question that I had from a few different things that you said. So you kind of discounted it because you were like, why me? And you're not the first person to have this experience where you're just like, why me? Apparently, we as humans have very low self-esteem. We really do for some reason. But the question really is why you, like, now that you've had all these experiences and additional experiences and continued contact with heaven, even that is not the norm for a lot of NDEs. It might be a one-shot deal, you know, and that they're just done. They don't really hear from it again, you know. So why do you think you have this continued experience with them? Do you feel like you're training? Do you feel like they're teaching you something, that they're prepping you for a higher level, I guess, a role in the afterlife? Or do you think,
I
you
hope
know,
it's a higher level role. I hope it's a higher level role. That's what I would like it to be. I have no clue. Uh,
but are you being trained? Do you feel like you're being taught anything, or is it just,
I think I am being taught things, and I'm supposed to be sharing them. That's why I'm sharing all that I've learned. I mean, there's a lot that, I mean, I tell you the experiences, but there's so much learning that went on around these things that can't be that covered in a talk like that,
yeah?
you know.
And it's in the book though. It's in your book.
It's in my book.
Okay, good, good.
Not
Okay.
all of it's in my book, because some of it even came up after that. Then I realized even more, because it's an ever evolving learning. So you think, oh, there's even more to it than that, you know, than I initially had.
So do you think
And
you need to be writing more books? Like, I mean,
well, actually, I am writing another book, and another
okay.
the other book, I'm just at the tail end of it, and I just keep getting life keeps interrupting me with one thing or another, and I'm on the tail ends of it, and I need to get it finished. But it's everybody else's experiences. I have tons of other people's experiences that are in this book. A lot of them are shared death experiences, which I had a shared death experience too. And that on my YouTube channel, you know, Janet Tarantino YouTube channel, I
Mm-hmm.
happened to capture my dad's spirit leaving his body.
Oh,
And So I got that in a film because I took care of them the last 5 years of their life. Must have had a contract because I just knew I was supposed to take care of them the last 5 years. And because I'm a near-death experiencer and they knew it, they were willing to share with me everything they experienced during the dying process. And that will be in this next book that I'm working on. So they shared what they experienced during the dying process. And it was an accident that I actually captured his spirit leaving his body. I was filming his breathing at the time so I could ask the nurse. And that's when I captured it on film. And now that film is out, there are tons of people. It's up to 540,000 views right now.
Wow.
And people are sharing all kinds of experiences underneath it. So,
wow, that's amazing. Yeah. Okay, and so then you mentioned that the description of the music box lady confirms that you had a plan in planning your life, and I don't. Can you just explain
because
that?
I thought of her as daddy's little girl, because it's my daughter.
Okay.
I didn't find out. Let me see. I got it right here. I didn't find out until after my daughter grew up, because this is the picture of the sumo wrestler and the music box lady. Okay. And then, it's in here somewhere. I've got the two of them side by side. This is the sumo wrestler and this is my daughter. I mean, the music box lady, and this is my daughter.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Oh, and I can see the dress. Oh, okay, yes, with the eyelets, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it's just her hair and everything is the same as this one. And yeah, so I knew that was her. When I saw it, that's when that fell together, because I didn't have that picture. My mom did, and when I went to visit their home one day, then I crossed that and I said, I knew it was Gina, but I said, oh, what does that? Then it dawned on me, it's the music box lady. And I knew it was the music box lady.
Wow.
So she had come into my first near-death experience to make sure that I would get back in my body so she could be born 15 years later.
Yeah. And that connects to my previous guest, David Oakford. Like, he's mentioned that he, at some point in this heavenly, I guess, experience, sees souls in a house, and that they are the four souls of his children, and they're telling him, get back, like, you don't belong here, you know? So this happens a lot, I guess, where they kind of just try to make sure that you were staying on point and staying, in character so that they can come in when they're supposed to. And that's amazing. Wow. Okay. And then how do diehard Christians, because like every now and then I love, like you said, I love being in this world of kind of like researching NDEs and things like that. But every now and then I get stuck in some of these extremely fundamental Christian NDEs, and I kind of pull myself up because there's just so much fear and just darkness in that. I don't know how people watch those, but how do like really diehard Christians respond to your NDE experience? Like, do they, because it has, you clearly have a connection with Jesus and God, like you're with both of them at certain points of this, do they confirm that they feel like this is a real situation, or do they say, oh no, this is all demonic, this is all, like, how do they respond, generally speaking?
They usually ponder on it, but then they pick something out because that this doesn't belong there. If it's a Christian NDE, that these things don't happen. Usually it was the Council of Elders, because a lot of them don't recognize the Council of Elders. Some of the beliefs, the Christian belief, I'm not sure if it's the evangelicals or what, but I know in our church, they just had a series on the unseen world and featured about the council. But they also said that they were fallen angels, and so that most of them were fallen. They said there could be a few out there that were okay. So I mean, it gets discounted. I get discounted from the spiritual side because I mentioned Christianity in it, and I get discounted by the Christian because I talk about spirituality. So that's kind of a sad thing.
It's the world we live in.
Yeah.
You can't really, but I mean, I'm surprised about the spiritual. I mean, I do know a lot of people get scared as soon as they hear Jesus. They don't even want to hear because they're so used to this fundamental, crazed, fear-based Christian narrative. They don't even want to hear it once you mention that Jesus was there. And I'm like, guys, come on. Like, if that's the case, you're not going to listen to any NDEs because he's in a lot of them. Just FYI. So that does go to the next question of the council, because I didn't know that that's what they would think it was. I'm just curious as to who do you think that these beings are? Because as soon as you have a council, and I've heard of many of these, like, they, a lot of times like councils of light, I guess you can call them, or councils of elders, you hear that a lot. But then they have different numbers. Sometimes they're 9, sometimes they're 12. I usually hear those two, 9 and 12, sometimes 7, 5, different numbers. As soon as you have a council, there's an assumption that people are being elected or chosen, for these positions, right? Who do you think these beings are, and how do you think that they are chosen? I mean, do you have any idea behind this? If you have no answer, then it's fine, but no, I'm just curious.
I don't. I think they're good. I know they're good. They're not the fallen angels, so there's not all of them fell, if that's what they're, that's what the faith people are talking about, because these are good and they're always teaching you good things, not bad.
Yeah, and that's the only thing, because like I try my best. I don't even like to use the word skeptical, but I like to ask questions because we don't know. And I know that, I just like to ask questions for that reason alone. And I want to make sure that we are good, that we're in a good place, that we're not in some kind of weird soul trap prison planet type thing happening. So I this is why I ask a lot of questions. But I do notice that with some of these stories, because there are some that I look at and I'm like, okay, I feel like this person was tricked. It's not even like, it's just tricked. Like, these are the same way we can change into all these different forms. That's another big question I have, because yours is very unique about how many different body forms you had. Very unique. I love it. But the same way we can change and shift, apparently these beings, especially ones that are more powerful than us, can change and shift as well, So I do see some scenarios where I'm just like, okay, is that really Jesus? Because it's not acting like Jesus at all, not at all. And but at the same time, when the message is continuously something positive and they're continuously teaching somebody something positive, I have to kind of remind myself to kind of let go of that idea, because there has to be good. I don't want to be like the groups that believe that everything is demonic, everything is evil. If that's the case, God help us. That's a really not good place to be. If everything is just bad, then just give up. So there has to be good somewhere. The same way there's good people, and you know people who are just like genuinely like angels on earth, then we also must have that above, as above, so below, So I really just try to ask a lot of questions so I can kind of discern, but at the same time know that everything is not demonic. Like, just drop it. It can't be. That's crazy.
I know there is a demonic force, but I don't accept it. I don't accept it to come anywhere in my bubble. So,
Good.
and it's worked.
Yes.
So.
And I'm glad you say that, because I think that's exactly how you do that. Because there are some people who literally, as they're even watching this, are being hounded by negative beings because they opened a portal or did this or that, whatever. But it's like the same way you as the soul were able to, just with the thought, you were like, oh, I love her dress. Let me look at it. Next thing you know, you're just right.
Yeah, that's exactly right too.
Yeah. That's how it works. Like, I mean, when you listen to enough of these stories, wherever you want to be, like if you're sitting, you come out of the body, you're like, Egypt, you're in Egypt, like, so this power, we have power in our thoughts, so we have to know that in the same way you do that, you can easily make sure that you put that protective bubble around you and these things are not allowed anywhere near you, so I'm glad you mentioned that. Okay. So, the next question, I don't think I'll ask. I mean, I was going to ask, like, why do you think you have so many pre-birth memories? But I think it goes back into the whole idea of like why you're having this experience in general. Like, it just seems like you're being trained for something, right? There clearly is some kind of pre-planning.
I'm hoping. I'm learning for whatever, maybe another book. I don't know. So,
Okay.
but yeah, continuously learning.
And then, so you said the two tunnels. So I'm still trying to figure out what I believe with the tunnels, because there are some that are dark, like black tunnels that look like a wormhole. And then there are those that look like the sun, that look like when, like the light at the end of the tunnel. You see those that are full of light. The two tunnels that you saw, you said they had two different backgrounds. One was dark, like the universe. Did it have stars, or was it kind of just like dark, like the universe without stars?
It was dark, but it wasn't bad. And
Just
because
dark.
the angels came through, it was like the universe, if you look out in
Okay.
the universe. But I really, to be honest with you, I didn't look for stars. I just know it was dark.
Okay. And so the other one, I don't know that you mentioned the one with the sumo wrestler. What was the background there?
He was in a white room, in a white light. He had a white table that he was, and a chair, white chair, because he was just sitting there watching me. And then he got up and walked around. Around the table. Initially, he was walking on high speed and it was really fast. And I thought that's really strange. But then obviously my spirit lifted up because he was in the tunnel up there, and then all of a sudden he was before me. So it was I lifted up into his dimension, and then he became normal
Yeah.
speed
And I
because
love, okay.
1,000 years, they're on a much higher vibration in
Yeah.
heaven than we are. Moves a lot faster.
Yes. And I'm glad you mentioned that too, because I totally believe that. And I think that's why some people who are high vibrational, they tend to talk faster, move faster, be all excited and stuff. And people just like calm down. But it's just that's the vibration of that's the higher vibration. Um,
That's that's
good.
why so much can happen in a near-death experience in a short period of time, because in heaven you're living out many, many years versus what we're actually experiencing here. So if
Yes,
you're
yes.
gone 10 minutes, it could be 10 years up there.
Oh wow, yes. And then I love that you're mentioning the background. That background sounds like what a lot of people call, because there's certain set things. You have the void, you have like heavenly, the metals and stuff like that. You have all these other things where people start seeing like Greek architecture and buildings and things like that, the Akashic records and halls. But you also have this white room, this room that looks like it doesn't have any like curves or edges, and but it's hard. Like they have a seat. So that sounds exactly like what people. I don't know what they call it other than the white
I
room. I
think
don't
it's
know.
in between. I think it's the in between
Wow, wow, wow,
because
wow.
after my brother passed away, 2 weeks after he passed, um, well, when he passed, I went to see his body at the funeral home, and I wanted to say my goodbyes to him, and I didn't know how to because I've never, been touched his face or anything. But so I caressed his face, and I caressed it in a figure eight motion, and I peppered kisses on his forehead. And before my brother left the house a week and a half later, they left early in the morning, and I was in the middle of a dream vision, and I was in a white room with my brother Doug, and he came floating through this door that opened, and I said, "Oh, Doug!" And just by the wanting to hug, we were hugging each other, and he rubbed my back in a figure eight, so he knew I was there that day.
Wow.
I said, "Oh, you knew I was there," and he smiled and he started backing away, and then he disappeared. But I think that's the in
Wow,
between because that was the
wow,
whiteness too.
wow, wow, wow. And then the sumo wrestler is like everything. Like that literally, if I had to pick my favorite part of your whole entire NDE, it's the sumo wrestler, because it's like if there's anything that could confirm that you're telling the truth, is the fact that your spirit guide is a sumo wrestler. Like who's gonna make that up?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and then I find out later because part of one of the 13 experiences is I was drawn to one of family member had a reading done by somebody she knew. Um, Actually, it was her mom's boyfriend's brother. It was a medium, and he did a reading on her while he was there visiting one day, and she said it was very accurate. I said, "Oh, I want to," because this was when I was trying to investigate how can telepathy work, help
mm,
us in this world. So I wanted to find out more about it. So I was going to mediums to see if that's how they got their information. And so I was taken to this man, his name's James Demos, and I didn't know that his specialty was connecting you with your master guide. And so when I got there, he says, "Oh my, you must have needed a lot of protection." He said, "Because your guide is a sumo wrestler." And I said, "I saw him when I was 15 years old." He said,
Wow.
"Yes." So,
Do you think that you had a previous life with him, or he's one of those that just never incarnated or something? Like, do
I
you have
very well
any?
could have. I think I probably had a previous life with him because I'm really drawn to um, their architecture, the
Yes.
Chinese. Yeah, I like my grandmother had teacups from China that
Mhm.
that Grandpa picked up one time when he was there, and I just loved those things because I love the way they dress. You know, those
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
olden days with those garments and stuff. I
yeah. When I,
just
yeah. when when I was a kid, remember I grew up, in the Bronx, whatever. For the first couple of years of my life, I just kept drawing the Japanese style houses. Like that's all I would draw. And my parents were just like, what's wrong with her? You know? But I really look back at that and I really started, and because I was really crazy about Japanese culture for a good portion of my life, and then finally it just faded away. But it really feels like that is a past life thing. It was very
yeah,
weird and it made no sense. But
yeah.
wow, I mean, it would be so cool to find out if you were like a sumo wrestler yourself in one life,
Either
you
that
know?
or yeah,
And,
yeah.
and
Something protected me back then. I don't know, but yeah, I think I
yeah.
was there.
Now, with that said, in any of your experiences, have you, and I mean, and excuse me if you answered this already, because I'm a little airy today, but have you seen any of your past lives? Like, have you had any experiences with past lives?
I have had a vision of before I met Bob, my husband from Austria, because I married him. Um, I had a dream vision. And actually, even the mediums kept telling me when I would go to them that there's people over in Europe looking over at you. And I said, I don't know anybody in Europe.
Mm,
And then I had a dream vision, and I was on this green hillside, really pretty green hillside, and it was during a war, and there was military personnel that were there. And this one officer um, helped me escape. And Bob ended up being that officer because I didn't recognize him until after he aged about 10 years. After I met him, then I could see that his face was the same as the person in my dream. So obviously, that was either a dream vision that he was going to be in my life and I'm going to be in Europe, or I believe it was a past life vision of
mm.
me on the hillsides in World War II.
Wow, wow, wow. Awesome. And then, okay, so once you kind of realized that the sumo wrestler was your guardian spirit, do you interchange? You mentioned that the Christians would call it a guardian angel or something like that, but do you interchange guardian angel with spirit guide, or do you think that we have both at the same time?
Well, we have many, but
Okay,
it just depends on the terminology you want to use. It's the same thing.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. All right, and okay, because I was just thinking about that because some people say that maybe the guardian angel is of a higher vibration than the spirit guide, and that maybe if you're not at that vibration or in that realm, you won't see them. So you might have just been able to, see one or the other depending on, what you could perceive, I guess. Okay, so now when the sumo wrestler and your future daughter were speaking to one another from the tunnels, could you determine anything of what they were talking about at all? Was it from their inflect, any movement? It was just they're just talking. Okay.
Just talking
Wow. Okay.
telepathically.
Okay. Now that whole experience, after looking at it, years later, what do you think was their purpose for showing themselves at that time? Because like generally if they show themselves, it might be to communicate with you, to say something, to tell you it's not your time, or this or that, or to heal you. And I just feel like none of that was done during that experience. Like it did open you up. Clearly, it got you ready for
The
future
first one,
experiences. Yeah.
the first one, it's because my daughter didn't want me to die so she could be born. Because if
Okay.
I died that night, she wouldn't have been born 15 years later.
But did
So
they
that was,
communicate to you, or at any point did they speak to you? Did I
no, but I had the knowing that that's why
knowing?
she was daddy's little girl.
Oh,
That's why
okay,
I
okay,
thought of
okay.
her as daddy's little girl. So
Okay.
because I thought of her as daddy's little girl, I must have known that I had some kind of connection with her.
Okay, okay. I just wanted to make sure because I didn't understand what if they didn't communicate to you, I just wasn't sure like what was the purpose of them showing other than to kind of let you know that there was something else outside of, the norm. Okay. Um, okay, can see them. Now during the second one, do you the car accident, the second NDE, do you think you were removed from your body for that small amount of time, relative small amount of time, to prevent pain or trauma? Like, what do you think the purpose was for pulling you out of your body during that? Did that help you to prevent feeling any
I
pain or
think we
something?
all are. I think we all are pulled out of our bodies during accidents.
Hmm.
Because
Okay.
most of the people you ask, they don't remember much of their accident. It's because they're
Hmm.
not in the body, but they don't feel the pain either because they're not in
Hmm.
the body.
Okay. All right, and that's good for people to know when you have somebody who has actually left, and you think that it might have been painful. That a lot of times they say, nope, we don't, we get out before, way before. So, and then you being in the void, and it's always funny because some people think it feels amazing, and some people are absolutely terrified because everything is just black. But I love that you mentioned it's like a spa day because I consider myself, or I used to consider myself the spa queen. Like that to me is just everything. So I love that. It gives me a whole idea of what that might feel like. And you saw the silver cord, and this doesn't happen for everybody. Every now and then you hear somebody who sees that or feels it. And some even say that they feel it in their solar plexus, like it feels like it's coming from the solar plexus and going up. But yeah, so I just like that you saw that. And now we get to me, one of the biggest parts of your NDE is just the change of body form. So I have heard many times that when people, and I might use the wrong terminology here, so you can tell me
Need
what's your
spirit
term.
body. You
Yes.
mean the change of spirit body? Okay.
Okay, so spirit body, I'll use that term because I usually say astral body. Is that
Oh, that's
totally
good
different?
too.
Okay.
Mhm.
But just so that we don't confuse people, I'm going to use your terminology. So the spirit body, I've heard many people say that they even coming out of their body, they look in the mirror and they'll see the bluish white kind of form, glowing form. And then of course the orb. Heard that millions of times too. We're a light orb, and then I love that you mentioned that you said the fish bowl.
Fishbowl effect. Mhm.
Yeah, so they say 360. So same thing. So once you're in orb form, it's like you can see all around. Love that. When you're in astral body, you can see like X-ray vision. You can see through things, but it's like I
Mhm.
guess wherever you're turning. Now, what is completely new to me here is that translucent white body. What is that? What was that? What do you term that? At one point, you said that you. Uh, am I confusing you?
No, no, it was
Oh,
just another shade of the spirit, I guess. Um, that I don't know. I never really thought about that. Good question.
you see, I dive deep, but
I just
I
know
have
that's what I turned into.
I have never. Did it feel different in any way? Did you see different in any way? It was just like
I mean, I only had a sense that it was white. I didn't see it because I was it.
yeah. Wow. I've now got to wait and see if I hear that again because I have never heard of this body. And then okay, so So what's and I love so some of these are not questions. I just say things that I love. I love that you said that you realize that your spirit, meaning all of our spirits, but your spirit was a portion of God's spirit, like a slither or a portion of God's spirit. And this is not new. I mean, people talk about divine sparks and stuff, but it's just like I like the way that you worded that. That's exactly what we are. And it makes perfect sense. This time out. And this time you were healed. Okay, this time you were healed. Now, what do you think? Why do you think sometimes they heal and sometimes they don't? Because this is a big thing. Some people are not healed at
Okay.
all.
And the third near-death experience you're talking about?
Yes, we're in
That,
a third.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, okay. Because between the car accident and between the third near-death experience, I had another experience because that was after the car accident, I started getting electrical shocks and my life kind of fell apart for some unknown reason. And then it was kind of like I felt like was being erased, and I could feel nothing in my body except for the spark. I felt a spark of energy deep in the pit of my soul. That's the only thing I felt. But then as I went to this, and I was stuttering too. Nobody could figure out what it was. No medicines would take care of it. But when I went to a Parkinson's specialist, because my hands were even shaking, he said, it's not Parkinson's. He said, it's psychosomatic. And I said, what's psychosomatic? And he said, it means your subconscious is doing it. Well, that's true, because our subconscious is our consciousness, and that is the spirit. It was the spirit that was making me over into a new person. It was transforming me through that process that I was going through into the person I have become today. Because I feel like I was then previously called Jan. And after that transformation, I felt so different. I started to introduce myself as my birth name, Janet, which makes a big difference to me. It doesn't to other people. But just like let's say in the Bible, Paul started to be called Saul, which was two different names, but one was the name of I think it was his Greek name and his Christian name or something like that. There was two reasons for those names, but he went by the other name because he felt so different from his transformation of his experience. So that's why people feel so transformed, and they end up being called, they go by different names. That was the transformation that took place. And during that time, I was invited my husband and I were invited to a function at the Pepsi Center with a spiritual speaker that was known to do healings. And I had never heard of this man before, didn't know anything about him, but I wanted to meet my husband's cousin, who was on the music staff there. And so we were given tickets to come down so we could see his cousin. Well, while there, it was at the Pepsi Center, and it was full, absolutely full to the brim. And when you're singing songs and you're praying, he was praying to, he touched me, Jesus, you're all I need, breathe upon me, breath of God, Jesus, you are the healer of my soul. I was singing those songs, and that's what happened in my third near-death experience. Breathe upon me, breath of God. What better way to depict that than having me transform into a shape of an orb sitting in a wand that kids blow bubbles from. He was telling me that he had created me, and he did touch me in that, and he did heal my soul during that experience. He didn't heal anything else, but he healed my soul. And after that, I know that I am, that I don't have the insecurities I had before.
Wow. So like born again to some extent.
Born again, yeah.
Wow. I love that. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I mean, people have these experiences. Like, we're getting into a place, like you said, with it not being locked away from having an NDE or a spiritual experience. Hopefully, I mean, there still might be some cases, but it's still a thing where people, especially if you're in a certain religious tradition and it's very strict, then they're just like, no, it didn't happen. They're shutting you down or they're pushing you out, so it still happens. And I myself had a time where I was, like you said, you had electric shocks. I literally was feeling like, I can't even explain it. Like, I was having, people call them mudras or something, where you're doing different hand signals or whatever. I literally would do that. I would have like these shocks, and then all of a sudden I would just contort into like a different hand signal. And I didn't even know what this was. I had to Google it. I mean, thank God for the internet and Google, because it's like, when you have these experiences that cannot be explained by the mainstream, then you have to just know that other people have gone through it, and that it's not completely out there. Yeah. And I mean, hopefully your book helps in that respect as well, like your book and other people's books, because it's not like we have a manual. There's nothing that where you can just go and say, oh, okay, when this is happening, if I'm feeling electric shocks, if I'm feeling this, if I'm hearing this, if I'm, there's not that manual. You still have to really search and dive deep to try to make sure that it's something that is spiritual and it's not a physical ailment,
Right.
or
Well,
problem.
they did diagnose it as myoclonic seizures, but that's from head trauma or spinal cord trauma or something like that. And with medication, it went away, and then all of a sudden it came back, and that's when I started the shaking and stuff. But it's interesting to know because it was pinpricks. I'd even, you know, you slap where you're getting that electrical shock because it feels like
Yeah.
a huge mosquito. And it would even happen in my face. So at work, I'd be slapping my face, which isn't very cool. Yeah, I said, no, but anyway, I don't do it anymore. But even this preacher, when I read a book on him afterwards, he said that he was overcome by the Holy Spirit, and he had all these pinprickles, and that's what it felt like, and that's what mine felt like. So I think that was the Spirit that was coming, you know, kind of breaking out and letting me know that he was there. That might very well be what's going on with you too.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's the other thing I've noticed a lot with like the Christian faith in general. Like they have their own term for things that well, pretty much every religion has their own terminology for the same things. Like we're all experiencing the same thing, but we'll have
Yeah,
different terminologies to make it feel like it's okay, it's sanctified, it's okay, you know? So I love that. But yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that in case anybody else is feeling that, having that experience, they'll have an idea that it's so, you know. All right. And then I just like I love the idea of the wand. I don't even have a question about it because it's just so, you know, I like that you just mentioned that it was kind of like a wand that you would blow a bubble, you know, that and that guy was creating through his breath, even bigger, because that's what through his breath creating, you know, you or us, right? But I've never heard of this wand of love. Like that was totally different. And do you feel like this is a thing or was it something that was just geared towards you for some reason?
I
For
think
you
it
to
was
understand?
geared toward me because of the prayer that I sing. Breathe upon me, breath
Okay.
of the song.
Yeah. And I think that's also the reason why a lot of people they discredit NDEs because of the differences, but they don't understand that that's how heaven works. Like it understands that we're all different and that we need different stimuli and visuals and experiences to get us to do what we need to do. Like we're unique souls, you know? So I like that. Okay, and you said everything in heaven is made of love. Totally agree. Love that. Um, okay, and then you were in the tunnel with God, sorry, with Jesus, and then God was on his way. I guess the light was on his way.
Mhm.
Um, you you just had that was just a knowing that it was God. At no point, you know, like it was just you just felt this is
I
God.
knew it was God because it's
And
God in his in every
okay.
energetic being.
And then you said that he held out his rainbow arms. I okay, you got to really explain this to me. It sounds amazing. I'm loving it. It sounds fantastical, but you saw rainbow arms? Like what did you see?
Yeah, I saw uh, rainbow extensions that kind of look like arms, and they reached out and they embraced me and pulled me in, and I felt like my back was against his chest, and while he showed me these moments, and he was cradling me like he would a child.
Oh, oh. That's to me one of the best parts of a lot of the NDEs. And it's something I don't know. I mean, I guess because we live so many lives, like a lot of people have said, I wish that everybody can have an NDE and have this experience, right? But if you think about it, we're living a lot of lives, and maybe at least at one point in one of our lives, we've had this experience. We have to kind of think like that, you know? But I just love the idea that you saw rainbow eyes. Like, when I see the rainbow, now that I understand what the chakra system is to some extent, you know, then that's usually what I now kind of equate it to. Like, do you feel like there was a connection to those energies, or is it just, I mean, why do you think it was a rainbow? Have you ever thought about it?
Because of the rainbow heavens, the rainbow colors in heaven that surround, you know, his um, what do they call it? His chair, his
His throne?
throne. Yes.
Is this a Christian thing? Because I don't know what that means.
Yeah, it's a Christian thing, evidently.
Okay, okay. All right.
But it was him,
And
because he's the energy, you know, of everything. So it has all colors in it.
yes.
But it looked
Uh,
white. It initially looked white, but I could feel the colors. Well,
mm,
in near-death experiences sometimes have capability of tasting color. I didn't taste
yeah.
it, but I could feel it.
Wow. And it makes sense, like you said, because the light is white, and then the color, you know, the whole color prism is within the color white, then it would make sense that you know, if you're looking, you would start seeing all the colors in the spectrum. That's awesome. Okay. And then why, okay, so why are the angels always, not to say angels, why is there always somebody on the other side trying to convince an NDE, or, and I mean, not to say always, because there are a few times that people, especially if they're a parent or a new parent, they're like, I got to go back. I don't know. I'm not going. I'm not going with you guys. I got to get back to my kids, you know? But for the most part, because Earth is difficult and hard and it's challenging, most people, especially when they're feeling that goodness and they're getting hugged by God and everything's going right, they're like, what life? Like body what are you talking about? They don't have any desire to go back. So why do you think that they're always kind to try to, I mean, literally to the point where it almost feels like it's like manipulation, like trying to get people to go back to the body and to the life?
Well, I think that was an option point, and they didn't want me to take it. So, because I had other things planned that I wanted to do, and they wanted to give me a choice. And once I saw Kurt's, you know, who knows, maybe when after I saw Kurt's and still wanted to go ahead, maybe they would have showed me one of my other children. I don't know. But
Yeah.
I knew
Okay.
soon as I saw that, I had to stay.
Okay. And then I know from previous podcasts that I've seen you in, that you did get to that moment where you saw why you were there to help your son, and you were successful in helping him. So
Mhm.
it was an actual moment. They weren't just, you know, making anything up.
Yeah,
So
right.
awesome. Okay. And we're getting to the end of it. I think I'm pretty much done. But see. And then I just had a, okay, so before we get to the very end, I just had a very, when you were talking about the ego, like you started to mention the ego, right? And how the ego and the soul, it's something in the way that you said it, it started to make me think about, like, is the ego the body? Like, would you at any point think, because, and the reason why I started to wonder that a little bit is because there are certain situations where people have an NDE or an OBE, and the body, and I've heard some extreme situations where this one guy's body was doing everything that he would normally do. It was like on autopilot for 3 whole days. Like he was just hovering above his body, watching as it talked, laughed with his friends, went to school, showered, like, and he's not the only one. I mean, that's the most extreme case, but there have been times that people are out of their body and the body is still talking, doing, being by itself. And that has always, it's one of those things I put in my back, you know, the shelf, because I'm just like, what, how is that possible? Like, what is going on? You know, what is the body that it could do all that? So I
Well,
started to wonder, like,
the energy has not left the body yet. So it's still functioning. I mean, you can, every night, most people astral travel in their sleep and don't realize it. They're out of their body and the body's sleeping, getting up and going to the bathroom and going back to bed. Because it still has, you know, your energy. You're still tied to it with the silver cord as well till it snaps, and then you go to heaven. So until it actually, the silver cord snaps, you'll still be on autopilot.
so do you think it's part of the soul that's still there? Because I know that we as souls can also kind of just break into the same way God can break into all these different pieces, that we have that capability to go even smaller. Do you think it's still part of us that is in the body managing it? And because I mean, it's not like it's just moving and it's like muscle memory. It's
Well,
talking, it's communicating, it's, you know?
our spirit is huge. I mean, this is our spirit is. I mean, if you consider our body here, we still have spirit up in heaven, so we're connected in both places. So it's we might, if you talk about a body, this could be just the size of a toe.
Mm,
That's how
yeah.
big
Um,
this spirit is.
okay. And then I think the last thing I have here, just like the message that you have from heaven is, you know, which again, this is like I said, like as much as I try to like conspiracy theory, and I'm always just trying to make sure it's not some kind of big scary thing happening. Um, you know, I can't imagine that the message of love can ever be a bad message to share, you know. So love is the only thing that matters, is what you were told over and over and over and over again. And what and I don't even know if this question even makes any sense, but like what do you think that means for us? Like how do we start to implement that? Like how does that stop wars? How does that stop racism? How does that, you know, make this world a better place? How do you see that that message changing the world?
Just by here, when the more that we spread the word, the more it will, be prevalent. It's just a matter of spreading.
For people who, because I mean,
Some people are not open to it, though.
yes, so I'm
That's
gonna
the
get to
problem.
that. Like
Yeah.
let's be really realistic here, right? Because this is a real message from heaven, and apparently that means like God or whoever wants things to get better as opposed to worse. We can easily get worse. We can do that. We can all go crazy, you know. But clearly that's not what heaven wants. So for those people, because what makes the world quote unquote bad, besides is ignorance and people just not understanding and people just being reactionary, and there's a lot of different things that come into that. Then you just have people who just want things to be really bad. Like you can consider it the dark forces or people puppeted by the dark forces, whatever you want to call it. There are people who generally are all about self and they want everybody else to be in their dust and to like suffer.
Mm.
So how does the idea of love overcome those beings, those institutions, those like how how do we get that to change them? We can't. It's either that or we find a big spaceship and send them off somewhere else.
That may be the only way. I don't know. It's just by inching along. That's all I know. So,
So
and we're
I mean, you watch a lot of movies. It's not like this idea has not been brought up. So I kind of hope that it's not that we have to create a prison planet somewhere and just send all the bad there, and let them just eat each other up. But that love is strong enough, because supposedly it is the most powerful. It's God, that love, because we're all created from love initially, that some part, that the most darkest being that there could be, the most darkest demon that there is, that something in love can gradually get them to turn to the other side, to transmute all that anger and darkness into light. Like it. I can only hope that that's the case, because if not, we're just pushing all of our garbage to another,
yeah, well,
putting
we got to
another
start with
rug.
the younger generation, because these things are generational, and if we start teaching the younger generation with love, eventually they'll grow up and continue to share the love too, and will become more of a more loving environment. But when you're working with somebody that's been it's been ingrained in, because there's not a soul that comes into this body, not a baby that's born that doesn't want to be loved. It's the outside influences of behavior of people that have caused this to happen to them. They may have been in an abusive situation, which altered their state of mind. So if we can keep changing bettering the younger generations, eventually we should have more light in the world.
Yes, it goes back to the children. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that's all my questions. I got them all out. Um, Now, if you could just tell people like what it's all about you now, so you can tell people the name of your book. I'll have it go across the screen. You can tell them where to buy it. If you have a website, if you take donations, if you want to, if people for how people can contact you, just give me all of that information right now.
Okay. Okay. My website is janettarantino.com. And on my website, you can find links to my book, Dying to See, Revelations about God, Jesus, Our Pathways, and the Nature of the Soul. There's a page on there with links to Barnes & Noble and some of the major ordering sites. And also has my dad's video on there as well. And also all my social media links. And you're welcome to contact me through my contact page there. All can be done through that site.
Perfect, perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
And
I'm
go ahead.
happy to talk to anybody.
Yes. And I usually say, if you have one message for, all of mankind, everything, it sounds like that it would be love is the only thing that matters. But if there's anything
Exactly.
that we haven't said or something that you want to tell everybody right now that they must know, then go ahead.
Okay. Heaven is real, God is real, and live life with love. That's all I can say. That's the most important thing. Just like it's the golden rule. That's the golden rule.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Janet. Thank you so much. I thank you for your time and I thank you for your service. And I really do hope that your message gets out there.
I hope so
Thank you
too.
so much. All
Thank
right.
you.
Well, blessing.
Bye.
Bye bye. you.